when you think you want to venture off and work for yourself, a lot of people will try to push you or scare you away because it scares them, and it comes from a loving place usually, like, oh, maybe it doesn't really come with benefits and a retirement, and you just hear all this stuff. So a lot of people told me, with real estate, it is a high turnover rate. Every 2 years, like 87% of people don't renew their license. Um, and people told me it takes like 2 to 3 years to really get off the ground. And I just feel like if you have that limited mindset to that, of course you won't. But I just feel like if you feel, if you grind it out and you work really hard, I did it in 6 months. I tripled my business in just a year at time. I mean, it's all mindset. So don't let people's, their perceived timeline of when I don't know. It just, if you feel like you can do it, then you can totally do it. If you feel like you can do it in 6 months, you can absolutely do it in 6 months.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Expert. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. Now, today we have another great guest on the podcast, Emily Dessingue. And Emily, we're going to talk a lot about a few different things, including, sales and a bit maybe as to how that relates to social media, business development. How do you kind of take the approach of thinking out of the box or just getting out of the box and making yourself stand out, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and networking and establishing some of those relationships, maybe a bit on how to come up with some creative content. And who knows, maybe we'll even talk a little bit about real estate if we have time as well. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Emily.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me again. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So, and for those of you, or for those of you that are listeners, Emily was on the Inventive Journey podcast series, which is a sister podcast to this, or the Inventive Expert. So definitely, if you haven't gone and checked out that episode, certainly invite you to do so. It was a great episode on that podcast series as well. But for today, as we're talking about a lot of the different areas of expertise and topics at hand, before we dive into that, maybe just, for those that haven't caught the episode or they're saying, hey, I'm too busy, I just want to know a little bit about you without having to hear the whole story. What's kind of the, introduce yourself a bit to the audience. Or kind of why do you have an area of expertise and why people should listen to you?
Yeah, for sure. So, I'm a real estate agent, which everyone's like, oh my gosh, not another realtor, right? I mean, there's so many of us. But for me, anyone that's looking to increase their sales or their business, really improve their business development should really listen in and really learn how, at least I'll tell you what I do to differentiate yourself in an industry that maybe is a little bit oversaturated.
Yeah, no, and I think that, the interesting thing is that one of the, so I love podcasts and both do or hosting podcasts, but a lot of the things that, if I'm listening, usually I go out for about an 8 or 9 mile run each morning. And one of the things I do is I'll either listen to a book on tape or I listen to podcasts. And then when I drive to and from work, I'm also listening to a book on tape, not really on tape, but or a podcast. And one of the ones if I listen to a marketing, there's a few legal ones, which I think are great and definitely applicable in my industry. But the other ones I'll oftentimes listen to is on the real estate side. And kind of to your point, the reason I listen to the real estate side isn't because they're going to have or talk about legal aspects, but I think it's an industry that is very crowded. There's a lot of people that get into it, people that watch the house hunting shows or watch Fixer Upper or something else, and they think, oh, I could do that. That would be fun. And so it gets to be a crowded market, which makes it all the more important or, and difficult to stand out and otherwise or market and get that following and get that traction. And so for those that are successful, I think there's a lot to learn from it. So I definitely think there's a good reason that, that if you are good at real estate, you have to have figured that out. So with that, this is kind of the initial things to kick off. And we talked just a little bit about before the podcast is the idea of sales and maybe even a little bit of overlay with social media. But if you're taking, fairly competitive marketplace, a lot crowded, a lot of people, as you said, another person in real estate, but how do you kind of go about sales or marketing and or getting yourself out there and standing apart?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I feel even if you're not interested in just like what you do, you don't have to be interested in real estate to take what I say and apply it to your own. It's kind of like just take what you want and just apply it to your career. But I think for me, the biggest thing about sales is just your perspective on it. I think how you view it is how you're gonna perform. And when I say that, it's like sales can looked at to be sleazy. It can looked at to be annoying, right? Like, I don't want to be annoying. It can looked at to be daunting. Some people get really scared when they hear like a quota, maybe they have to reach. And so I feel like if you go into work every day with that mindset, why would you perform well? You know?
No, no, I'm totally in agreement with you. But now, how do you deal with that? In other words, what are some of the ways that you go about, addressing that?
Yeah. So like for me, so how I view it is that I viewed it in a few different ways and I thought about it beforehand. One, I view it as just it's a numbers game, right? And I know I say this all the time, but I just view sales as a numbers game because in order for me to get business, I have to talk to people. So first, my first thought is, okay, how can I talk to as many people as possible? So there's one. Then two, it's like, okay, my initial thought is how can I help that person? And it does not involve helping me, but it's just how can I help them? And I feel if you have that genuine thought right off the bat, people are one going to like you. You're not going to come off as a sleazy salesperson. And business is people helping people, right? So I just feel, and I'm sure you've had this from having people go on your podcast, but if I just say, hey, listen, how can I help you? People usually naturally want to think, well, how can I help them? you know? So, I mean, I would love to know, I mean, how much business have you gotten from just promoting people on your podcast?
Yeah, I mean, without getting into the numbers now, we
Yeah,
definitely, I think that, to that point with the we do a lot of efforts, podcasts, we do free strategy meetings. We're always, looking for putting out educational materials. And that's a lot of what we do. We're a lot of a good port or source of, leads and or people that are needing help. And I think that having that kind of genuine feel of, everybody understands when you're talking with whether it's an attorney, eventually it's they're wanting to have your business because that's
right.
why they're in business. Same thing with the realtor. But I think if all you're doing is just pushing the sales side and or all you're doing is saying here, get your give to me, and you're never putting out that value or establishing anything more of a relationship, it makes it more difficult. So I definitely think on the, even on our side with the podcast, with a lot of our other endeavors, establishing that relationship, that connection, and providing value to them rather than just saying, how can you provide value to me, definitely has a large impact.
Yeah, so when you go and so now, and we'll talk more about how you can creatively get in front of people, but I think one is just like the mindset, like, okay, today I'm going to talk to X amount of people and I'm just going to think, how can I help them? And, comes with that networking. So when I talk to someone, I'm not saying if someone asks you for $10,000, like, here you go. But if they're like, listen, right now I'm just really looking to be connected with, I don't know, a plumber, right? That has nothing to do with me. But I'm like, all right, actually I do know somebody. Let me make that connection. People are going to remember that. They're going to think of that, like, wow, Emily's she's a nice person. Because I feel when people especially see like someone like me, a realtor, their guard is up because they're like, oh my god, they're going to sell me on something. So immediately, if you're just genuine and like, how can I help you, I feel like already you break that barrier.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think that, if because we do, and I get a lot, sometimes I just say, hey, I don't know of anybody, but if I come across anybody, I'll definitely send them your way. But a lot of times, with startups and small businesses where we are helping them, as an example, with the law firm, with a lot of the things, legal aspects, also saying, hey, you probably work with a lot of other people that may have these connections. And if you do know of anybody, we'd love that introduction. And, sometimes I say, hey, I don't have any of those connections. I'm sorry, but if I make them, I'll definitely let you know. But a lot of times it's like, hey, yeah, I have those connections. I'm happy to make introductions. Never make any promises, but I think that it's definitely a good place to be able to provide value. And I think the more places that you can provide that value to individuals, the more likely they're going to one go with you for the first time, but also you're going to have a good impression. They're going to keep coming back. It will spread by word of mouth. So I think there's a lot of benefit. Now, to what you kind of started to hit on, which is, I think that part of the difficulty for some people, and it depends on your personality, it depends on your industry and everything else, but is making those or how do you go about making those connections? So give you an example. I hate going to the networking events where you have all the cocktail, and it's been less so with COVID, which probably fits my personality better. but even
Yeah.
more, whatever it is, where you just go and the event is really just a networking event where you go and you talk with people, and everybody knows the reason you're at that networking event is because you want to make connections to see if you can get more sales. So everybody's really just trying to pitch all of their products. I always find them uncomfortable and I don't like going to them. So I don't get out in front of people that way, and that doesn't work well for me. But I found other ways that work for me that I do feel comfortable and that I enjoy, and that it tends to work out much better. But how do people even go about kind of getting in front of people or making those connections, or otherwise finding what works for them?
Yeah. So, I mean, so one, to your point, right? Networking events, I mean, they really haven't been, I haven't been to one in person in over a year at this point. So they've all been virtual, which I have, my feels about them. I have gotten business from them, but I think with that, it's just been, if there's I don't know, like with networking events, they usually give you the list of people that went, because you can't talk to everyone that's at these events, right? So it's getting that list of people that attended and just going down the list and seeing who makes sense for you to talk to. Once again, maybe get a virtual coffee with them, set it for 30 minutes, see if it's even worth going further into. But I have had success with networking events. I know they're not everyone's favorite, but they're a great way to just get in front of people. Even if they don't need your service, it's building that relationship because they might know someone that does. If networking events just really aren't your thing, I really think it's important to almost just enhance your personality. What do you enjoy doing? What committees can you join? What boards can you join? I think that's another big one, is following a passion that you don't mind putting time into. I hear some people are on committees and they're like, yeah, I don't really care for that, whatever. And it's like, well, why waste your time? Why not be involved with something that you're passionate about, but also collab with people that think like you, because then you're probably going to build a really great relationship. So, and there's other ways too. I mean, personally, I love dancing. I haven't danced in a really long time. So I decided, what's a good way for me to meet people and do what I love? So I got my license to becoming a Zumba instructor, and I'm like, let's do it. That's another way that I can really do what I enjoy doing, but also meet new people. So I think it takes brainstorming of what you enjoy. If you're a sports person, I know with COVID, I don't really know right now. If you love sports and you're on a flag team, do you talk to people on your flag team? Do you invite them to like a seminar? I know seminars are big. Do you create a podcast? I have a girlfriend that made a podcast and she's killing it. So it's really like asking yourself, what do I like? Who am I? What do I enjoy doing? How can I take what I like and turn it into something where I can, collaborate with other people?
No, and I think that's a good point. One of the things, and I'll take it, it was from the real estate podcast, and that I listened to. And for anybody that wants to know which one I listen to, it's called The Real Estate Marketing Dude. I'll give you the one thing is he does like to use a little bit more explicit language. I'm not a big or cusser, but if you don't mind that, it has a lot of good information. But one of the things he hit on, I think, in almost to your point, was that he had and I think it was his friend, so it was a friend of a friend type of a thing. But was it the going out and was meeting with friends, and he was talking, it may have been him or his friend, I can't remember which, but was talking at, I think, a bar or at a restaurant, and they were talking about, his friend was saying, hey, I just, gave this referral to this girl that I want to go date, and basically going on and saying, it's for real estate and for selling houses. And he looked over his friend and said, that's what I do. Like, how come you didn't get me? And he's like, oh yeah, that is what you do. I just didn't think about it. I forgot that that's what you do. And yet they're friends and they, meet up and are doing things all the time. And yet it's just one of those things that if you don't, whether it's in the sports events, whether you're out and doing things, people have to know what you do. And it doesn't mean you have to sell. It doesn't have to mean you have to be pushy or ask them all the time if they have any, things, for you to, if they want to buy your product or use your services. But even just giving that, or as a gentle reminder, this is what I do, this is how I can help people, and offering that value and finding those ways, I think is a great way to make those connections.
Yeah. And I think to your point, you brought up something really great too. So now it's like, okay, so now I'm talking to people. I have a genuine mindset. I'm doing what I enjoy doing. I'm talking to people, but then also it's being consistent, right? So I can attend something and then not do anything about it. So if I make an introduction for networking, do you follow up in a few weeks? It's a great reason to talk to them again. Hey, how did that connection go? Did you guys meet for coffee? Okay, great. How's everything else going? It's a great reason to reach back out to them. So then it's also following up with people too.
Yep, absolutely. And I said one of the things I like, and just going back to the podcasting, it's a natural way that you can provide value to them, and yet it gives a good way for you to also make a good or establish a good connection and introduction. In other words, you're promoting them, you're helping them to reach new audiences, and in that process, you're also establishing connections. And so now shifting gears slightly, but kind of following along that, one of the things that I always admire about people that do well in real estate is how they're happy or how they stand out in the marketplace. So one is creating the connections, one is offering genuine value, one is finding the places that you feel comfortable. But as a general rule, even with all of that, how do you go about standing out? And I think that there's, a lot of lessons you can learn with, across a lot of industries about how to stand out and stand out in a good way. But how do you go about standing out in a crowded industry, aside from just the general making connections or otherwise getting your face or, getting out there?
Yeah. So, I mean, one is, and feel how you feel about it, but social media is my biggest platform to developing business. It is what it is. I mean, I personally do it, social media, not everyone loves it, but for business standpoints, it's just where you got to be. That's where you're going to get in front of the most people. So now, okay, so now I'm promoting myself on social media, but what am I doing? So for me, I'm a naturally fun person. I like to have fun. I like to have a good time. And that's how I want my clients to feel when they work with me. So what I did with social media, I see a lot of realtors, they'll post every few days about a house that they have listed, which is great. You should absolutely do that. They'll post testimonials, which is great. But I wanted people, when they see like my Instagram story come up, I wanted them to be like, oh my God, I love Emily's, stories. I can't wait to click on it. So it's like, how can I do that? So every day I have a certain segment. So like yesterday was Wednesday. So I call it What House Wednesday. And I post a famous house either from TV or from a movie, and make it a quiz. And I say, what house is this? Is this the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or the Nanny? And then the next one, how much did it sell for in 1978? And I give them 2 options, and I make a quiz, and people love it. And does that mean I'm going to get business right away? No, but now I'm on top of their mind, right? You're gonna be like, oh my God, yeah, Emily does real estate. Look at this questionnaire. So it's being creative and thinking. For me, it's like, how can I make people want to go to my pages and have fun?
No, and I think that that's a good point. Now I think one of the interesting thing is to kind of give the contrary point of view, and not contrary really, but I think you have to, if you go too far in making it so fun that they completely forget what you do, then it has almost a negative effect in the sense you're not providing the value. And give you the example that I was just reading on the other day is, you think of some of the most iconic commercials or the funniest commercials, and oftentimes it's with the Super Bowl, but even on that you regularly see on TV. And if they're so far afield and they are funny and they are catchy, then all you remember is the catchy part of the commercial. I say, hey, did you see this commercial? And everybody laughs at it. And then you think, what is that commercial? I don't know who it was for, what it was about. And so I think, making that tie, kind of like what you did, what house is this? It has that fun, catchy nature, but it also has a tie back into real estate. In other words, it gives an easy reminder as to what you're doing or what industry you're in. And I think that definitely provides the value. And the one I always had to laugh is after I saw that, there was a commercial, and I honestly don't remember what it was for. I'm guessing it was for insurance companies, just because that's what they usually seem to be with, but I have no idea. But it was, it was a guy that was on a basketball team, and the mascot came in and said, hey, I got a new play for you guys to win the game, and it's a half court no hook or no look hook shot. And it was just a funny commercial, and we all laughed at it. And then after I heard that analogy, I'm like, I have no idea what business that was for or what they were even selling, but it was funny. And so I think, just doing something out there just to be funny doesn't necessarily have that return on the efforts. But if you can, I think, like as your example, if you're tying it into what you're doing, but make it in a way that is interesting, interactive, people remember you, and and build that pipeline, then it has that balance and has that reward to it.
Yeah, no, you could totally go off left field and people will be like, oh, that was fun, but I don't know why she really did that. So yeah, to your point, I always tie it around real estate.
Yep, absolutely. And give you just another example, something we do a lot the same. And so you mentioned socials, and I'm not a big person on a lot of Facebook or Instagram. I know why people are on there, and I'm glad that they enjoy it. It doesn't fit my persona, but I do love LinkedIn, and that's where I tend to, if I'm on social media, where I tend to be at. But one of the things we do, and a lot of times it's with podcasts, and occasionally I'll throw in my own, is we do, what is your craziest idea or crazy idea that you've always wanted to pursue?
I saw that. Yeah. So, you get feedback. Yeah.
You get feedback. It's fun. It's interactive. And it also ties back in with what do we do? We do it in inventions. We do crazy ideas. We help help you to actually protect them. And so it's a
Yeah.
fun way to get that interaction, yet it ties back to what we do without just being so blatant. Hey, do you want to do a patent application or a trademark? Because it doesn't, people don't want to be sold to so hard and pitched to, I think, a lot of the time. And so I think making that connection, there definitely is a great place to start. One
Yeah.
other place that we hit on, and it kind of, I think these all kind of tend to build on each other, but is how do you come up with those creative? I mean, you hit on one that you're doing. I mentioned one that Miller IP Law is doing. Any thoughts or ideas if you're saying I'm kind of stumped? I don't have a ready or a whole bunch of just creative thoughts and creative content that I can come up with, or I don't have a pipeline and with them. Where do you start at, or how do you even start to crack that nut?
Honestly, I'll start, I think it's helpful. So I'll start brainstorming and I'll start writing down things. But then admittedly, I'll ask my boyfriend, someone that doesn't have, who's just an outsider. And I said, listen, if I did this, like getting an outsider's opinion, I think is really helpful. So if I'm like, hey, like if I did this, how would you feel? If you saw this post, how would you feel? If I left this on your doorstep, would this be weird or would this be creative? Or even getting, just like a friend's input. Getting input, I think, is so important. Obviously ask people that support you and want to see you do well, but also won't mind telling, being honest and telling you how they will actually feel. I really value people's opinion when I have a new, what I think is fun idea. And even recently, I had this idea and it was a little over the top. I'm going to actually start doing bridal trade shows, because typically when people are engaged, they're looking for houses. Kind of just goes hand in hand. So I'm going to do one, and we had to think of different ways to make my booth stand out, because no shade toward, like, I don't know. Sometimes you'll see like an insurance booth and it's just kind of like, some people, they're not there for that. So they'll kind of curve it. And I don't want people to curve my table. So how can I get your attention? How can I not just be another realtor looking to sell it or buy a house? So I've been running ideas off of people, and people have been open and honest and telling me when something's a great idea or no, don't do that.
Oh, and I think that that's a great way to start. And I think, two things you hit on. One is just the idea of bouncing it off of people. Now, I'll give you the caveat. I think a lot of times people, a lot of times, especially if it's people that they either go one of two directions. Either they are your biggest fan and they tell you every idea you have is a good idea, regardless if it is or not, or they're your harshest critics and they just tear apart your idea and you just walk away demoralized. In either case, sometimes it is one or the other. It is a really bad idea. It's a great idea, but it's hard to gauge when. So I think the idea is, you may start out there and get some feedback, but even asking whether it's current clients, past clients, strangers, or people that are in your industry, and testing that out, because I think that you can get some feedback. You're not going to get everybody that likes it. As an example, we do gift boxes for our clients. The vast majority of the clients like our gift boxes. We've had a couple of people that complain about getting free gift boxes, and I never understood the mentality. If I got a free gift box, even if I didn't like what was in there, I'd just be appreciative that they sent it. But
Yeah.
the point I illustrate, not everybody's going to like it, but so you're not going to try and please everybody with an idea. It's not going to appeal to everybody. But I think you've got to say, one is, I don't want to offend people, and two, I want to make it so that the vast majority of the people like and engage with it. And if you can hit that medium, I think testing out ideas, crazy, non-crazy, as we already talked about, tying it back to your business definitely makes sense.
No, I totally agree.
Well, this is a fun area, and one that I'm sure we could talk on all day, and we'd have a great conversation, and people probably say, I'm done listening, I got to get back to work. So as we wrap up, I always like to end off the podcast with the question, which is, in your area of expertise, and so I'll either choose on more of the marketing, the sales, and some of the things we talked about, or in real estate, what is one of the biggest myths that are out there?
For me, I've heard, when starting off, and kind of tying into what we just talked about, when you think you want to venture off and work for yourself, a lot of people will try to push you or scare you away, because it scares them, and it comes from a loving place, usually, like, oh, maybe it doesn't really come with benefits and a retirement, and you just hear all this stuff. So a lot of people told me, with real estate, it is a high turnover rate. Every 2 years, like 87% of people don't renew their license. And people told me it takes like 2 to 3 years to really get off the ground. And I just feel like if you have that limited mindset to that, of course you won't. But I just feel like if you feel, if you grind it out and you work really hard, I did it in 6 months. I tripled my business in just a year at time. I mean, it's it's all mindset. So don't let people's, their perceived timeline of when it's, I don't know. It just, you feel like you can do it, then you can totally do it. If you feel like you can do it in 6 months, you can absolutely do it in 6 months.
Yeah, no, I think that there's a lot, and I think you hit on one, which is there's a lot of times it comes usually from a loving place, and people are just
Right.
have your best events at heart. But a lot of times it either comes from people or maybe wanting to do it themselves but are too scared to, or they like the comfort of, my wife is a good example, and I like to pick on my wife. I don't really pick on my wife. I love her. She is the opposite of me in the sense she is not an entrepreneur. She would never want to run her own business or do her own thing, and I get
Yeah.
it. She likes to go to work, or she would like to, and she's now a stay-at-home mom. But when she was doing nursing for a while, she liked to go work. She had her things, and somebody else told her what to do. She went. She had a definitive amount of time she was there. She could do it, do a good job, and go home, and that was all she had to think about. And so for her, she wouldn't be the person I go to and ask for all the business ideas, or she wouldn't be encouraging, not because she doesn't love me, but because to her it doesn't make sense. And so just because people are coming from a loving place doesn't mean that you should let them dissuade you from pursuing your own business, pursuing a passion, or otherwise building something that will be enjoyable and worthwhile to you. So I think that that's a great myth to overcome, because just because other people don't want to do a startup or a small business or think it's not a good idea doesn't mean it's not. It just means that it might not be a good fit for them, or they might be otherwise fearful of it.
Correct. Or if they fail, doesn't mean that you would fail at it. You're not the
Absolutely.
same person. You're different people.
Absolutely. Well, as we wrap up, if people, if people want to reach out to you, they want to connect up with you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want you to sell their real estate, they want to buy real estate from you, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Okay. Well, I feel like last time we did this, I tried spelling out my email and it was really long. So it's like, let's never do that again. So yeah, anyone's always welcome to reach out to my business phone. If I just say the number,
Sure, go ahead.
518-396-8012. Love to chat.
All right, that was probably easy enough. People can remember it, or they could or text you or call you and get your email address if they want to hit you up there. So that works
Exactly.
out great.
Text
And
me, call me, whatever.
definitely encourage people to connect there, and definitely a lot of expertise and value that you have added. So, well, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you, the listeners, if you can leave us a review, you can share, you can like, whatever you can do to help us promote. And it's not just for us. We want to make sure that all the startups and small businesses get all this great expertise and be able to continue to learn how to or grow their business and make it a success. And if you, on that note, if you ever need help with patents, trademarks, or anything else with your business, feel free to go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. Well, thank you again, Emily, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks so much, David. Have a wonderful day.